Hey, I'm Decathlon Gamer. Welcome back to F1 Manager 23, episode 64. 3 races to go in the season, and Jack Crawford had his latest negotiation fail. He's asking for a lot of money. We've talked about it a little bit in the previous episodes, but now, as we enter the final race of the season, Jack Crawford still will not negotiate with us. Last 3 races of the year, and no negotiation attempts are coming up. We have one last race weekend for maybe one final shot, but at this point it looks like Crawford has decided he does not want to sign with Williams for next year. So the guy who comes in as third best on our roster of drivers that we've had since the beginning of the series, only third best, already has been offered more money than any other driver that we've had up to this point, and still refuses to sign. So the most selfish driver that we've had come along is showing that selfishness. And when I go into the scouting, for whatever reason, usually the mid-tier drivers, or not mid-tier, midfield drivers, F1 is a very different thing. Crawford doesn't even count as that. He's at the back of the grid. He's 19th best, or 18th best, something like that. The upper tier F2 guys, the rookies that you could bring in, none of them want to sign. There's 2 out of 20 or something like that. 90% of them have no interest in signing with us. We could have a little bit of a crisis on our hands, and it could leave me with a huge decision to make. But we still have one race weekend to get through, and we may avoid it with possibly one more attempted signing with Crawford, or we may not. Let's get through the race weekend and really find out what we're working with before we freak out and have a difficult decision to make. Whether we go with the second female driver right off the bat, or whether we still settle for somebody who's going to give us a little bit more than what we get out of Flourish while still being a similar driver. That was my intention all along, is to start bridging that gap so that we can. That's why we've gone with these weaker drivers and haven't, signed a mid-80s or a upper 80s or a 90s driver, where we would have to turn around and nerf them to avoid us getting too high up the grid. Anyway, Abu Dhabi.
The season draws to a close here with the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. A long season has led us around the world over all this year's races to get here. The last chance to settle the season in the final round.
With an ERS that's beat up so badly, Flourish has managed to qualify 18th ahead of the 2 Haas cars. That's a big step for her, but even bigger is that Crawford has qualified P2 for the final race of the year, with the closest competitors having penalties knocking them further down. But that does mean that Albon in the Alfa Romeo is going to be quite high up the grid. We're going to have a race on our hands to stay ahead of Alfa Romeo, it looks like, while AlphaTauri is a little bit further down, a little bit slower, one would think. Though we're only talking about a 1/10 of a second between the pair. In fact, if you're looking at, Q2 times, it's flipped. Q1 times, it's almost a half-second advantage for the Alfa Romeo, so they do look to be a little bit quicker going into this final race in our head-to-head matchup.
Only 58 laps stand between the drivers and the checkered flag here under the lights at the Yas Marina circuit. The Williams driver, their attention purely on the race now.
A second place start for them today. They'll be aiming for a podium, but could they even sneak the win?
And it'll be exciting to see just what will happen here today. Anything could happen. It's the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. And it's lights out, and away we go.
Great to see one of our cars on the front row, but we're starting on the mediums, which means we're going to be a little slow off the line. But those around us have also picked that same strategy, as at least the front 3 have all opted for that. Flourish already dropping down to, actually she moved up P17. She's battling with Zhou Guan Yu for that. And Crawford does have a little bit of a fight on his hands for whether he can hold that P2. The Ferrari Russell off the line has been right there with us, and eventually we do pull ahead here and into P2, so we will hold that position, which is ideal. We don't really want to be P1 without DRS, but P2 is a great spot, and you can see we've actually opened up a bit of a gap here over Albin, who got around Russell. Can we get him out of that DRS range in these first couple of laps and pull away? Wouldn't that be something if the top two open it up and get away from the others as those behind battle it out and in slower cars? Is Albin on the softs? He is. He is on the softs, so he has managed to push forward a couple of positions, or a position at least, to start the race here. You can see just under half the field are on the softs while everybody else has opted for the mediums. Those on the mediums are likely on a one-stopper, medium to hard. Those on the softs are likely on a two-stopper today. The two-stopper can be a couple seconds faster, but traffic can ultimately hold you up, slow you down, and kind of get you out of position. As that second lap is done, I'm going to push on just a little bit longer here, but not with Florsch. Florsch, settle in. Only one lap of underfueling on this one. I want to keep pushing because I'd like to get Albin, or keep Albin, out of DRS range. It's very, very close right now, and he does not get the DRS, and you can see how it quickly opens up to 1.4. But as we battle with Ocon in the Mercedes for the race lead, getting that double DRS, the slingshot works, but can we actually get away from Albin or not? Battery's empty. That push got us the slingshot forward. If he slingshots back around us, can we start pulling away from Albin? That is my goal. That's why I'm pushing on that little bit longer, just trying to get him out of DRS range and open this thing up. There's a lot of cars that are already out of DRS range. If we can run one more lap, let's go ahead and go standard. We're ahead already, right? So just pushing with fuel could do the trick. Ocon with a mistake. He's all alone, and we are alone at the front of the grid. Ocon spins on turn 7, and we're 2 seconds ahead. Well, for now, we'll run our pace. If they catch up, they catch up. We have no slingshot option. Ocon was clearly the quicker one, but we're 2 seconds ahead of Russell and Albin as they battle. I'd love to see us pull away, but I'm just not sure Crawford's going to have that kind of pace. So let's settle down. Let's go forward. The two Haas's have gotten around Florsch, but Ocon is down to last, so Florsch is 19th for now. And they are catching back up to us. So over just a couple of laps, they've gained a few tenths per lap, closing us down, and are going to get back within DRS range pretty soon. It took a few laps. Multiple cars have crashed.
And yep, it's the Haas that's affected there.
The Haas, and the Haas. No, AlphaTauri. Well, that would be good for us. Good for Florsch. Very little contact in that. Not much to it. Looked like there is some carbon fiber. A wing maybe. Or a side pod, or maybe a little floor. Albin down to 4th, but the two Ferraris have caught up to Crawford. He is no longer out there on his own. Crawford's extra push cost him an extra 0.6 of a kilogram that we're going to have to make up as we only underfueled by a single lap. I doubt we're going to have any major issues with it, but Russell slingshots Crawford and immediately puts himself out of DRS range, but we have enough pace to close him back down. We're getting enough slipstream on the long straights to close back within, and it works out, and there you go. Pit stops begin for those on the softs. Albin, Bottas coming out on the hards. Actually, I think everybody's going to... not Gio. He's on the softs again. Softs to softs. Interesting choice on that one. Lap 18 here. Field spread, definitely a thing today, and that's great for Crawford. In terms of gap, though, midfield's far enough back that we are out of range of a lot of cars already. And only the one stop is going to help too. But those on the two-stopper can end up coming out ahead. They're going to gain some ground here for a while. Crawford's down to P3 as Leclerc and Russell are both ahead of us, but we are just behind. It's okay. We've got a big gap to Norris behind. Final pit stops of the year. Crawford down pit road, both going from the mediums to the hards. Florsch will be down pit road just behind him here. 2.277. Great stop to finish the season there for Crawford as we go through the tunnel, and you can see Florsch still has a couple turns to go. So pretty big gap between them, but a lot of that really came down to that qualifying masterclass from Crawford today. He's going to come back out in P10, having been undercut by a number of cars, so his virtual P3 has become P10. 2.658 for Flourish is a slow one. She's going to come back out in last place. Unfortunate there. We're going to want to watch temperature. She's 12 seconds behind. What the heck happened there? She get undercut that bad? There's still others to pit. Russell hasn't pit. There's multiple cars still going, but that's a pretty healthy gap right there. But we're set to go the distance. No more pit stops, depending on race situation. VSC or something will probably switch to the softs if given that opportunity. Crawford already back up to P9 as Russell, who pit like a lap later, we managed to undercut. That's the difference. That is the difference right there. So ahead of us, Leclerc somehow came back out in first place, pitting like one lap earlier. Leclerc was 1 second ahead of us, and there's 8 positions, and he only pit one lap early. I don't understand how that managed to happen. Everybody has pit once now, but you're looking at a lot of two-stoppers ahead of us. But how much will they hold us up? What is the gap? 8 seconds to Leclerc. He was 1 second ahead. He pit one lap earlier, maybe 2 laps. It might have been 2 laps earlier. Wow. Talk about a massive difference there. But we're surrounded by one-stoppers just ahead of us. So we're kind of a virtual P2 right now. But Leclerc could be running away with this thing. I have no idea how he managed to get ahead of all those guys. I mean, he's in clean air. He's got a good gap to Porsche. And what about others? Russell's going to go the distance. We have Norris, maybe. He pit that 1 or 2 laps earlier. And Flourish. So really, there's only about 4 cars that are looking to be one-stoppers now, based on what we're seeing here. As for fuel recovery, we're down to 1.2 for Flourish. She looks good for that. I don't think she's going to have any problems. Crawford at 1.8 may have to lift and coast a little bit. It's lap 32 of 58, but of course, we burnt that extra fuel in those early laps to try to get away from the group, only to have the mistake from Ocon give us, the strategy. Ocon's only recovered to 7th. Yes, major DRS damage. We're at 14% for Flourish. His last race of the season. Did not want to spend that $2.5 million. That's not helping her today, by the way. It's really not helping her. But yeah, overall gaps. That one hurt, and we're stuck behind Ocon now and others. I'm going to have to do a mixture of lift and coast and push to try to get around these guys. We've got to do something here. Oh, we do go up the inside. Nice. Up to P6, so we get around signs. Let's push to stay within that 1 second on Ocon. Alright, well, fuel recovery-wise, we're about where we were. Between the lift and coast and then the push, we've moved up a couple positions. 3 if you count the pit stop. Though Ocon did get away from us in that he had a little more momentum. He was on the softs, and we were right about a second as we went past. But he had a little more momentum. Was able to get out of the next corner a little bit faster. It opened it up to 1.2, and then he just started to pull away from there. So no use going too deep to try to chase him down. He's entering the pits anyway. So there you go. There's one more position. It's P4. 8.3 behind Leclerc, meaning we had lost a little ground. We've already recovered that. We're back to where we were. Again, he somehow came out that 8 seconds better off, being that couple laps earlier. Having already seen that those hards will only just make it with a little over 30% left at the end of the race on the one stopper, it's pretty evident that you couldn't be too low and have any hope of making Ocon on hards. Really? 15th. Verstappen's already pit. He's 14th. Those guys are way down the order. Now, there's a lot of cars that are still going to end up pitting here, but Leclerc's not. We're not. Russell's not. Norris is done. Porsche is done. Verstappen, Ocon, Piastri, Florsch just barely, and Gio are all done. And that is Russell sneaking through. That is not a position that will gain back. He is going the distance. So Crawford has been overtaken. He's now down to a virtual P3. That is Russell, who we had pit like a lap before. And we're able to undercut. I mean, that one lap took us from 2 seconds behind him to just ahead of, to over a second ahead of him. That one lap pace there at the end was huge on the difference. And we seem to... Oh, big mistake there from Crawford. He rejoins pretty quickly, and those two cars, Sainz and Bottas, are both cars that will get out of the way. But look at the extra wear. It's 5% on the extra wear there after running wide. He's also going to have zero confidence right now. It's low. This is a worrying stretch here for Crawford. Will he get out of this? Fingers crossed. Oh, big mistake there. That it didn't even cost us an actual position. Now, coming from behind, other guys could catch us. But the bigger thing is, will he make another mistake? 17 laps to go. Top 2 is now totally out of reach after that mistake. Albon and Sainz both need to pit. They can't go the distance on those. They're going to have to come out on softs here real soon. Bottas will. Ocon does not. Ocon's the one I worry about. We've kind of probably lost a position there. Or will lose a position there. Traffic, Ocon, Sainz. Yeah, there goes Ocon. He's gone right on through. Ocon's long gone. He's already caught and overtaken Albon. That is the pace difference. And Crawford just does not have it. We're not even under fueling for him, and he's not overtaking. In fact, Porsche is now coming up alongside us. This is bad from Crawford. Overtakes him just like that, but Crawford can't seem to do it. And the lift and coast was only just now. Florsch 13 seconds behind. She's going to finish last today. Does not need to under fuel anymore, so we can focus on Crawford the rest of the way. Down to 0.5. And we've kind of drifted back a little bit. Let's close it back up. 0.4. Don't really have spare tire wear to push. Don't have spare battery to push. And I definitely don't have spare fuel. We still need to lift and coast a little bit more. 1 to 2 laps worth to complete the process. We have caught up, though. And have some momentum. And have caught up to Albon, who's staying out there for whatever crazy reason, trying to go the distance on these hards, and that's going to get us up the inside of Sainz. Albon is so slow that Sainz did not immediately get up over him as he stays out there. This is a key position. We need that DRS. We need every little ounce. Come on. Come on! Seriously, we're hitting the brakes. We were hitting the brakes to not overtake him there. And look how easy that was. Stroll goes through. We go up the inside of Stroll. We cannot push anymore on the fuel. We've got to get back to a lift and coast here, but we're ahead of Albon. We're ahead of Albon. Okay. Neutral. We're going to take it right to just the 0.0 in the red. I think we can easily cover that off in these last few laps. Okay, let's start looking at those gaps. Oh, Verstappen goes right on by. Final lap, Leclerc. His pit stop, perfectly timed. Came out 8 seconds better than us. That little bit later made a huge difference. That set Leclerc up for the win. Ocon coming on strong here late. Albon's pit came way too late. Bumped him all the way down to P15. Can't recover from that far down. Leclerc takes the win ahead of Ocon. Russell is going to finish off the podium. That's Russell who got ahead of us, passed us on merit, on track. He had that position, but yeah, P4 should have been ours. That mistake cost us quite a bit. Now, would Porsche have caught us? He was only 2.5 seconds back of Russell. I'm guessing he would have. I figured we would have finished P5. I think we still would have been ahead of Stroll had we not made that mistake. Possibly. Certainly would have been that little higher up for sure. Maybe P6. But it's a P7. Florsch, the only car lap down, though she was, well, 28 seconds down, but she did have that ERS and a couple older components holding her back further, but it's a story all too familiar at this point. There are females with better pace. And if Crawford is done, if this was his last race, if he doesn't re-sign with us, big decision to make on what direction to go, especially when 18 or so out of 20 options, the would-be options, the Crawford-like options, or the Gota-like options, that range, if none of them want to sign, do we go all in on the female driver now and just, fingers crossed, hope to keep our job long enough for them to develop? Final drivers' standings. 450 points for Verstappen and a championship. Norris takes second. Leclerc is third. Sainz, Ocon, Russell, Pourchaire, Tsunoda, Stroll, and Gasly are your top 10. Crawford, well ahead of 13th. Not too far behind Bottas. And, Alpine as a whole was well ahead of us. And that's not bad. In the constructors, it's Red Bull with 711. Mercedes 601. Ferrari is third. Huge gap then to everybody else with Aston Martin and Alpine. Alpine just ahead of McLaren. And then we do secure P7. Those 6 points getting the job done. Alfa Romeo at one stage there. Late on, if Albon had gone all the way to the end, maybe. I don't know if he hangs on to that top 10, right? He was well off the pace. He had pit too early. Even with our problem, we only just made it. But we pit much earlier than he did, or much later than he did, rather. That made the difference. We were able to go the distance. We do get the points, though not as high of a position as we were hoping for, but nothing for Alfa Romeo as a result. But it was a very tight battle for 7, 8, and 9, and then Haas was definitely off the pace, scoring just 6 points all season. One podium for Alfa Romeo. One fastest lap for Alfa Romeo. We had one podium and one fastest lap. AlphaTauri had 2 fastest laps. A lot of those are like late pit stop situations. Even Haas had a fastest lap this season. And the fastest pit stop, that 2.2, was easily the fastest of the day. Florsch's 2.6, though, was only 8th quickest, so he scored 29 points today. And in the final standings for the fastest pit stop competition, a comfortable second place, less than 100 behind Red Bull. Obviously, that's going to be the target next season, is to catch Red Bull. But they've been quite a ways ahead of us. It's going to be hard to finish bridging that gap. But we've done really well to go from, what were we, like 6th a year ago, 5th a year ago, up to 2nd. So the way our pit crew is progressing, I like our chances of competing very closely with Red Bull at the top in the coming season. But of course, for the first time now that we are at such a level, we are going to have a larger drop off than these teams at the bottom. So we do have more to recover just to maintain than we did previously. But I still think we've got the ability to go forward. Fastest pit stops this season was 10. Fastest pit stops total all time is 10. So all 10 of our fastest pit stops have come this season. Fastest pit stop was a 2.253. That 2.27 there in the last race was close to the best one we've seen yet. Following the conclusion of our last race of the season, Florsch, who just recently went from a 70 to a 71, is now a 72 overall. She is making progress still. It's helping, but it's just that overall race pace that hurts her so much. She doesn't feel like a 72. Crawford also improving to an 81. That's not going to help us on that re-signing part. But Tanaka also improving to a 61. Following the race, Crawford now has medium patience. So we're going to get at least 2 shots at a contract with him. And I think one more year with Crawford is perfect if we can make it happen. It's just the it's the salary part. I mean, we're up to 4.25, and he's still not taking it. he's not happy with the one season thing, and it might be driving up the price slightly, but paying him off long term is a lot worse than just paying him next year. We'll start at 4.5. Like you said, I think we're gonna get just 2 attempts at this. Is all. Still declined. Still not happy. We're gonna go all the way to 5. I'm gonna really opt to. Actually, you know what? We're gonna go. I'm worried about what's gonna happen if we don't get him signed. So 5.2. Declined. $5.25 million, and he still doesn't sign. That's absurd. That's it. He's gonna be done. Yes. That is it, folks. We have to find somebody else now. One of the few who is willing to sign with us is Bortoleto, and Bortoleto has just won the F2 championship. Skoglund is another one of the ones who's willing to sign with us, and he finished second. Something to keep in mind as we have a big decision to make here shortly. Option number 1, let's just go ahead and try to sign him. Ollie Bearman, an 81, which is right where Crawford is right now. But he's got pace. We're talking some really good, solid, upper 80s average pace. Accuracy isn't great, but that's not going to be a ton of mistakes. The control isn't great, but that's definitely not going to be very many mistakes with an 84. Smoothness leaves a little bit to be desired. That would be something we would want to work on throughout that season. Overtaking is also just at 69 with average aggression. I mean, he's not fantastic, but about a 70 plus average aggression when you have good reactions means overtaking is going to be possible with DRS. Unlike Gotha, where it just was not possible. And with a 90 in cornering and solid braking, like, he could overtake on corners, potentially, especially with the kind of car that we have. In fact, I would think that Bearman could be better by some margin than what we've had these last couple of seasons. Or, somewhere in between Sargent. Certainly ahead of Gotha and certainly ahead of Crawford in all likelihood, and with everything that's happening here of late. And even though his development rate is down to average, I don't worry about that. It's a one season thing. He is open to negotiation, and like I said, most of that tier of drivers, starting from about Bearman down, don't want to sign for whatever reason. They're not interested in coming to our team. Now for Bearman, he has been a reserve driver for AlphaTauri for the last 3 seasons, so he has not raced in a few years, but he's got some quality, and I'm thinking he's somebody we could probably sign on relatively cheap because he wants to race. He's also got an expiring contract as of right now, so perfect timing to bring him in. 500K is too small. Let's start at like 1 million. Yeah, contract decline, better bonus threshold, definitely more salary. Trying to not mess around too much here. Coming up real quick on that salary, not small increments. So we'll go right on to 2 million here, or at least 1.9. Patience is already down to medium. We're only going to get about 2 more shots at this, so let's go to 2 million. And there it is, contract accepted. We went from not liking the money to liking the money in $500,000, but 2 million is going to make him a lot cheaper than what we were fixing to pay. We were already approaching 5 million on the contract for Crawford. All right, so we still have a driver who's going to be middle of the road for us for another year as we transition our way towards the eventual female driver. I think my plan, though, and why I very intentionally went for 1 season, is 1 more year. Regardless of where we're at, 1 more year, we are going to pick a female driver to take that second race seat. Whether it's Tanaka or somebody else will depend on how this next season progresses. If I'm not mistaken, I think Ollie Bearman is in the Ferrari Academy program, or at least he was. I have not paid close attention to F2 this last season, or 1 race into this season so far, as I had in previous years. I've been a lot busier this last year, and where I've kept up with F1, I did not keep up with F2 and F3 as much. Final driver development update for the year. Crawford is going to go out with a +2 on his defending. Kind of useful, but only semi. As for Florsch, though, +1 to cornering, which is fantastic, and a +1 to reactions. It's only 2 points, but it's 2 valuable points, and she's finally a 60+ in everything. As for Tanaka, it's a big one. +2 to cornering, +1 to smoothness, +2 to adaptability. Total points is great with 5, but only 2 of them are, well, I suppose the smoothness. 3 of them are valuable points. Good pit crew manager, you can get a lot of training in December without fatigue. We are going to finish up December 31st on 5% fatigue and hovering, under 8% daily throughout the month. With just that little bit of recovery time. We just had a race weekend, so we're just recovering from that. But we are able to get a +1 to all of our pit crew attributes, finishing up on between an 85 and an 87 to end the year. +2 to our car building. It's at a 37. It started the year, I think, at a 34, so we only gained +3. We're going to still end up losing more than we've gained continually again for another year. But those pit crew attributes, we had a lot that were mid-70s to start the year, and a couple that were, like 78. So we really picked that up. It's going to take another healthy drop, probably about 8 points per attribute. It's a fair bit to recover over the course of the year, but it's definitely better this year than it was past years. We saw early mistakes in the year, but they really cleaned it up. Really did see more mistakes this year than we had, though, the last couple. But as for the pit stop times, we're looking at exiting December with a 2.36, which is the best we've seen by far, and down to a 6% chance of mistake, which is the best we've seen by far. The car building is the one that's behind. That's going to take a lot more to catch up as we do things here. But we had a maximum of 86 just like a year ago. Now it's a 91. So that alone already has us in a higher place than we've ever been. And with our reset for the new year, of course, we'll have a lot of that recovered even before the first race. Not entirely. I would think we'll be, 83, 84 on the pit crew attributes by the first race of the year, but the estimated pit stop time will hopefully be right where it's at now, the 2:36, which is crazy. And then next year I think we'll focus on that car building a little bit more, because we won't have as much to do to max this out, and we'll already be in such a strong place with the pit stop time itself. I was hopeful we were going to get one more project in, but even committing the full range of engineers will not get us there 3rd of January. So we are done with our research projects for the year, with the last few finishing up. $10.5 million bonus for finishing second in the fastest pit stop competition. That's huge. Florsch, of course, 0 points this year. That was really disappointing. I thought she was in for a better season. She had won the prior season. I thought she'd get 3 or 4 points this year. It was not to be. In fact, she looked further off than she was the year before, and that was the worrying point. But 12th place for Crawford, and we might even have a better driver for the coming season, so I think we'll have an easier time maintaining a 7th place in the year to come. Our team rating has improved slightly from 2 3/4 stars to 3 full stars now. My team principal rating has gone from a 200 up to a 300. Our team rating, identical, no change. $1.5 million bonus from the board is all, but that's $12 million extra that we didn't have moments ago. The changes for the year to come. The chassis, big 30% hit on the chassis. I think I've recovered about half of that so far this offseason. The side pods, just a 10% reduction, though I have committed primarily to the chassis, so I think I've only recovered 3 or 4% of what was lost there. So we're about 15 and 6, give or take, is my estimate. We'll find out here in just a moment. But we do have a gearbox, ERS, and engine limit increase for the coming season. That may just put us in range to have no penalties throughout the year. That would be big. No $7.5 million cost. We'll have that up front. Though, one would think that's going to come with extra upfront cost like tomorrow, January 1st, as we prepare for the new season. 5 million increase to the cost cap. Is that 5 million to cover the sporting reg change? Could be. 2 seasons left on our goal to get 6 podiums. We had just one this year, and yeah. We have definitely moved our funding from 9th up to 7th last year, and now we're solidly at that 7th once again. So it's pretty clear where we kind of fit into the grid these days. Total funding to expect right now is 99 million. Preseason lump sum expected at 2. Income per race expected at 3, but we'll be making some changes. As always, putting all the appearances on the male driver on Crawford in this case gets us some extra funding there, cutting everything else down to a minimum so we get as much development as we can, as much morale boost as we can, and pushing up that merchandising to a maximum for the long-term funds. That now bumps our income per race to 3.2 million, same as what it's been the last couple of years, and a preseason lump sum of 17.8. Apparently, our board objective is once again going to be 7th place. I'm happy with that, especially as we are not pushing the boundaries too far on that one, keeping things reasonable so that we can get those female drivers taken over at some point and not have that massive drop off. But we're looking at coming out right where we were. So 21.8 is where we were at the beginning of December. So for that, it looks like we're in good shape. And here is that technical change. So the chassis, we've covered it off. We have really covered it off. So cooling, we've gained 10% on the chassis. And we've covered off all but 2% of the change. So the 10% loss ended up adding up to 20% value loss, but we recovered 18% of it. So just a minus 2%. So the chassis is going to be, well, with the engine cooling being even better than it was, I'd say that's a slight net gain on the chassis. Front wing, no research projects. So it'll be identically the same. Rear wing, no research projects. Identical. Here's the big one though, the side pods. Engine cooling just 1% gained. Oh, the chassis was the 30%. We nearly covered it off? Wow. Okay, this was the 10% loss at its airflow. We've got 5% to go. We've got 5% or just under 5% to finish recovering what was lost on the side pods. Underfloor, we did get a little bit of a gain with a research project done, and same with suspension. Both of those are minor. We had no additional time to put into them. We focused primarily on that chassis, and that chassis is just about where it was. So I'd say we are with slight loss, slight gain, slight gain, slight gain. I'd say we're a slight gain entering the new year, and that's probably a good starting point. The Mercedes engine has its pluses. It's got one kind of key minus that has hurt us, and I was mentioning the acceleration being a big part of our issue. Well, we develop, we grow, we get better there, but we still have the Mercedes that has the least amount of power, and that is one of those key components of our acceleration shortcoming. If we wanted to have the top acceleration and top speed, if we switched to Red Bull, we'd have that, but then we'd have issues in another way. I'm going to go ahead and stick with the Mercedes and just know that our acceleration is going to be middle of the pack. But as long as we have okay reactions, it's not going to hurt us so much. And the wear over the course of the season is just so much better with the Mercedes than it is with anybody else. So January 1st, and it's giving us a Crawford update, which is no update. He's had no change through the off season so far. Flor has gained one more point in smoothness, and for Tanaka, she's picked up a point in smoothness and a point in reactions. You know, one of the nice things about nerfing ourselves and not having the best drivers, we have a car that's first or second best. Yet we continue to get good simulator time, wind tunnel time, because we're only finishing 7th. So nerfing yourself actually does have some advantages to it, beyond just the expectation piece. It helps us keep the car at the front of the grid, despite having less than those around us. So the pit crew performance, minus 10. Wow. I didn't expect it to be quite this severe. We're looking at 10s and 11s. Figured maybe 8s and 9s this year, but yeah, 10s and 11s. It's going to put us in the upper 70s. Definitely hurts. Only a minus 4 on the car setup piece. I think last year it was a 33, so we're 1 point below where we were last year, despite not putting an emphasis there. But the speed part, minus 8. And it's crazy that that's only a 63 in terms of the rating. Our pit stop time, that's a 63, and remember that phenomenal December we just had? I mean, that had to be a couple points of that. It was maybe a 60 or a 61 before that. So getting back to that point doesn't take as much, but it does. That's the hardest one to gain on, is the speed piece. January's already setting me up to recover half of what we lost in the pit crew attributes, where it was 10 to 11, so we're getting 5 back by the end of the month, and it's close to 6. It's like 5.5 points. The car building is close to 2 points recovered already of just 4 that we lost. So pit crew attributes is 50% recovered just in the month of January. As for the pit stop time, we ended the season at a 2:42. We're already back to a 2:45. December gave us a bit. We've got 0.04 back so far of what was lost. That's good progress for just 1 month. It's the all-important team roster update. Red Bull, Verstappen, Sainz, Solov as the reserve. Mercedes, Norris, Ocon, and O'Sullivan as their reserve. For Ferrari, it's Leclerc, Russell, and Mini. Aston Martin has Logan Sargent, Pourchaire, and Beganovic. Alpine, Gasly, and Sonoda. McLaren is Magnussen and Stroll. So Stroll has finally left Aston Martin. He's with McLaren now, and a 90 overall. For us, of course, it's Flores and Bearman, with Tanaka as our reserve. Guan Yu Zhou for Alfa Romeo, and Alex Albon for Alpha Tauri. Hadjar gets a race seat finally, along with Zane Maloney. And then Haas is Drugovich and Piastri. Piastri just an 86 overall at this point. The F2 driver updates. Weak first team for Prima. Wow. Virtuosi have okay drivers. No females in F2 as of yet. No females make the F2 lineup, even though you've got a lot of drivers in the low 60s or high 50s for F2. What about F3? This is important for the future of trying to sign drivers. Prima have Keller and Hoffman, both in the low 50s now. High Tech have Bernadette Brun. Was she already one of the drivers in the pool? I think she was, but I'm not sure. Bianchi with Van Amersfoort. Fallbush, the third driver for MP Motorsport, now a 59 overall. Good enough overall rating anyway to make the F2 lineup, but did not. Elizabeth Winkler, that's a new one, I believe. A 43 overall. PHM. Janzer have signed Sandrine Michel. In the pool overall, Verstappen and Leclerc still on top of Russell and Norris. No changes to any of their ratings anytime recently, but there are now 4 90 overalls behind them. A single 89, a couple of 88s, and then Zane Maloney coming in next highest at 87. Crawford, who refused to sign for reasonable money, has not gotten a job, so he is a free agent now. His fault. His loss. Confirmation about the only new female in the pool this year. It is Elizabeth Winkler. So the others all return. I think all of the ones we had already are back. Yes, they are. So one additional female enters the pool for this year. New driver Winkler comes in with terrible pace. She has good reactions, and that's actually her highest attribute, but her other highest is adaptability. does not look good for anything. She does have high development rate, but she's only a 43 overall. I don't think Winkler stands much of a chance of making it into our vacant race seat. But on the driver development update, as we enter February, Bearman +1 to accuracy. It's still off-season stuff, so you still only get a little bit. But +1 cornering for Florsch, right point in the right area, +2 smoothness for Tanaka, and a +1 to reactions. She's making really good progress. And what are we talking about? Cornering, braking, and reactions. Mid-60s. Cornering, braking, and reactions. You know, I've seen in practice Tanaka has been faster than Florsch quite a few times, and where she's really lacking is the cornering speed, but she has pretty solid braking and reactions. She's got 2 out of 3, where Florsch doesn't have any of them. She doesn't have any strong suits in any of the 3. All 3 are a little bit on the weak side. It's just that cornering piece. If she could get like suddenly a +8 to cornering, Tanaka would be an easy choice for that second race seat. February will be the first race weekend of the year, right by the end, and what we're coming out with is +9, where we had 10 or 11 in the pit crew attributes lost. We've already recovered the car building 3 out of 4 points, so we've nearly covered everything off pit crew attributes by the first race weekend. As for the estimated pit stop time, I think we left off at a 2.42 at the last race weekend. We're already down to a 2.43 by the beginning of the first race weekend. So we've managed to cover off the off-season through the preseason, and we're going to be able to pick up right where we left off at the end of the season. That's a phenomenal place to be. I mean, it's a really good place to be at this point in time, because we now have a whole season ahead of us to make further gains. Now, there's the occasional month where the race calendar is so busy that you're just kind of breaking even, but we've really come a long ways on the pit crew development, and I could see us challenging with Red Bull before the end of the season, maybe early. The development side, you know, there's so much less rest in there, yet it's managed, and that is coming down to Anna Bernard. So we've got the staff is coming along. The staff is really helping us out despite being fully female. 2 of our initial set of upgrades, and something I've done this season was I wanted to get the first upgrade to each component out of the way first and shed the weight. Get rid of the weight, get the big bonus. Front wing is good. It's hard to upgrade our front wing when it's already the best, but you shed weight and whew, it makes big progress. You add the new weight at the end of the season, and then you shed weight, and it makes big progress. It's the biggest gain you're going to get all season is shedding the weight. And so we're doing that with all 6 components. The first 2 are on the car, the other 4 are in development or starting to manufacture, and here is where we are to start the year. Well, outside of brake cooling, it seems like we are right where we left off at the end of the season, or just about. Top speed, 1st. Acceleration, 11th. That's where we were. Low speed cornering, medium speed cornering. Our first high speed is 3rd, though, so we have dropped from 1st to 3rd there, but we had dropped further than that, actually, at the end of the season. That's where we were. We were like 1st, 3rd, 5th, or 1st, 5th, 5th at the end of the season, so actually we're back up to 1st, 1st, 3rd. DRS effectiveness is only 3rd this year. It was 1st, so that's something that has fallen off a little bit, but dirty air cornering is 1st, 1st, 1st. Brake cooling is all the way down to 19th, but it's at 82%, so it's not bad at all. Engine cooling is also right at 82%. DRS effectiveness, 81.5. Car's pretty good. Seems like we're already due for another major overhaul. The cars are close together, and that's kind of the problem, right? That is a definite problem. It's hard to make gains at this point. It's really hard to start finding little bits, and that means first to last is pretty dang close in the field. So we might be first, but everybody else is really close behind us, and it's hard to get much more performance out of the car at this stage. A major overhaul would set you up nicely for a run and an advantage. I think that's why Florsch had a point a year prior, but even though we were still at the top of the grid last year, didn't get the point. The difference being that the field spread is a lot less. Back of the grid has closed up the gap. And so even though we have that best car still, it's only just ahead. Where for a little while there, with the new regulations, we were well ahead. And even though she was slow, it is getting better, just couldn't be competitive enough under the circumstances. The driver performance is such that she's just not there, doesn't get enough out of the car when other cars are close. But with the post-Bahrain testing behind us, that means we are just about ready to begin the new season. And that's where I'm going to go ahead and end this episode. Ready to start with the new season, which means we'll get right in with a couple races for the new episode. That's going to do it for this one. I'm Decathlon Gamer. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Have a good one. Be safe out there. Bye for now.